Hello, everyone. It's Charlene Lee, and I am broadcasting today from the beautiful country of Morocco, and in particular, Marrakesh. So I'm in this beautiful Riyadh. It's here around me and behind me, and it's just a privilege to be speaking with you today. It's also my birthday, so I've been looking forward to this day for years because it's 2/22/22. It's a Tuesday, as someone said to me. So I'm really enjoying the day, having a wonderful time here on my vacation. But I also wanted to take a time to, because the timing just works perfectly today, to talk about something that's really important to me, which is the idea of feedback. Now, when we think about feedback, it's something I think that we just all dread. It's something. It's like the worst things that you just dread that moment when somebody comes up to you and says, "Can I give you some feedback?" So those few words can just like make you go into a panic mode. And also the same thing where if you know you have to give feedback to somebody, you may just absolutely dread it. So I'll share a very quick story about this. Early in my career, I had a manager who had it was absolutely wonderful. We had a fantastic relationship, but he had one major problem in that he had really bad body odor by the end of the day. And so it was especially bad because we had to drive to the client together from our office and at the end of the day drive back. And so I was really struggling and other people were noticing it and they said, you just got to put up with it. What are you going to do? Tell the person, give them that feedback. That's just really hard. And then I realized I have a great relationship with this guy, and he obviously doesn't know about it, and somebody needs to tell him. So at the end of one of our feedback sessions, we were checking in with each other. I said, "But there's one more thing." And I said, I'm sure you don't know about this, but you have really bad body odor at the end of the day, and you need to do something about it. He goes, "Oh, I had no idea. Thank you so much for telling me. I'll put it on my to-do list." So sure enough, it was taken care of. And from that day on, I realized something that feedback is a gift. That when you are doing it, when you are giving it to somebody in the hopes of bettering that person, of bettering, improving your relationship, then it truly is a gift. And not something to be dreaded, but something to be looking forward to. So I would love for you to share what are some of your best practices or experience in creating and providing feedback. And in particular today, I want to talk about how important it is to create a culture of feedback in your organization. So, just to give you an idea of what an issue this is in an organization, Gallup recently published that only 26% of employees, of people, felt strongly agreed that they get great feedback to improve their work. So not only did they get feedback on a regular basis, but they felt it was beneficial to them that they knew what they could do to get better. Only 26%, a quarter of workers. And an astonishing number, only about 19% said they never get feedback. And another 24% said they get feedback every once in a while. I'm sorry, 19% only get it once a year, and 24% said they get it a few times a year. And the issue is because we have this aversion to providing feedback and to give feedback, we are oftentimes focused on giving feedback about past performance. That dreaded annual review. We're talking and looking backwards. Versus, I think we need to move from a mindset that feedback is this really difficult thing, only sparingly given because it's so difficult, to something that's done all the time. And to think about it as a coaching conversation, a two-way conversation about how we can improve the work situation, the output, the effectiveness and the operations of what we're doing. And when it becomes that, then you're starting to really move from a place where it's a conversation, it's given all the time. It's an opportunity to listen, to ask questions about what happened, to test your assumptions about someone, about their intent of why they did something, and to seek to understand why something happened, rather than just point out that something bad happened. So that's why I think great feedback conversations need to be a part of our cultures. And it's something I think that we don't do enough of. And this is extremely important because one of the reasons it's so important is that if we can't set that stage for having feedback on a regular basis, then how are we going to have more difficult conversations? How can we have the difficult conversations that come with, for example, I don't think I'm being paid at the same level as somebody else around pay and equity? How do we have those difficult conversations around diversity and inclusion and belonging? How do we have those difficult conversations around somebody who's underperforming? If we haven't been giving them feedback about how they can improve, then how do we have that difficult conversation to say, I don't think this is a good fit for you? So these are all key reasons why we need to be doing it. So I just want to pull out some of the comments. Thank you, Rusty and Jay, for saying happy birthday. I appreciate that. And let's see, Mansoor has a great point here, that I agree that feedback is a gift. However, we need to understand the art of passing it in a constructive manner. We are definitely going to talk about how to do that. And Mansoor, if you have any examples of how to do that, would love to hear about them. And here's Jay Bryant talking about some of the best practices he's observed. It has worked for me by following an agile framework and providing feedback daily in the stand-ups. I tend to provide feedback frequently and in a timely manner. So Jay and Mansoor, what a fantastic segue into what does it look like? What does great feedback look like? How do you create a culture of feedback so that it's something that you do every single day, all the time? So some of the reasons why we don't give feedback is that it's hard, it's stressful. We think it's going to ruin the relationship. People aren't going to take it well. People will get defensive. And frankly, we're super busy. So we often find excuses to not provide that feedback because, well, that moment passed. They forgot about it. Let's just keep moving on. It's not worth having to stop and take on that risk. But instead, if you have a culture of feedback, meaning that there's a process, there is a known expectation that when somebody says, "Is this a good time to give you feedback?" you know what's going to unfold. You know what that's going to look like, what that's going to feel like, and you know it's going to be a really good experience. So if when you have that and you know that the feedback's going to be constructive and helpful and given as a gift again to help us all improve, then it sets a very different expectation. So the example I'm going to give comes from the Center for Creative Leadership, and it's called SBI, standing for Situation, Behavior, and Impact. You can find it at this short link, bit.ly/ Okay, and now I'm back. So thank you everybody for helping with that, just being patient with that. So I'm going to put up the banner again. Hopefully the banner is up there so you can see the connection back to the feedback. I'm sorry, the feedback resource from Center for Creative Leadership called SBI. So I'm going to go through and hopefully give you a little bit of a context for what that looks like, what SBI looks like. And I was sharing before I got cut off that SBI is something that I did at Altimeter because I realized that as high achieving, somewhat insecure overachievers, we as analysts were not very good at talking to each other and giving feedback. We liked each other a lot, so we felt bad about giving each other feedback, whether it be taken the right way or not. So we just went, look, we need to figure out how to be better at this because this is truly holding us back. And it was having a big impact on our culture. So we started using SBI. And the reason why it's called SBI, it means situation, behavior, and impact. And it's so easy to remember. Situation stands for the situation that you're in. So the manner that you start doing this is, well, the first thing we did was ask somebody, first of all, can I give you some feedback? Is this a good time? And they would say yes or no. If it's not a good time, then you figure out some other time to do it. Say yes, then you go on to the next one, which is you're going to describe the situation. This is the situation. We're in a meeting yesterday with all these different clients. Remember that situation? And the person would say yes. Okay. Then you move on to B, which stands for behavior. Well, this is the behavior observed. There was a moment where people were just really stuck, and you took that time to just pause everybody, to ask everybody to stand up, take a deep breath, and just recenter everybody. And then when we got back into things, people had done a reset, and it just changed the energy in the room. That was amazing to see. And then the I is the impact. And the impact was that you observed on me or others was that we could move past that roadblock and be able to do that. That was an amazing situation. So that's a great example. And the last part is ask them to mirror back the feedback, especially if you are giving them constructive feedback. So this idea of an SBI is that it gives you this opportunity to, in a very concise way, describe the situation, the behavior, and the impact so that you know exactly what the context is, the person knows exactly what the behavior was, and then you can describe the impact. Now, you're not saying, I observed in maybe a not so positive way, I observed that you got really angry at somebody and you started raising your voice. And you're saying the impact on that person was that that person felt like they didn't have a chance to be able to give you, like, ask like what was going on because you just quickly ended the meeting. Now, you're not putting into an intent. You're not saying you're a bad manager, you're a bad leader. What I think is being careful to say that this is not about intent, saying that this person is a bad person, but it was the behavior that you observed and the impact that it had on me or the other person. And the more it can be the impact that you have, the better it's going to be. Because then you can ask, what was going on? What was, I'm curious to know, now that you understand that impact, mirror back the situation to me, but also what was going on? Were you aware of this? Did you understand? And that person then has an opportunity to explain to you, oh, I was coming out of a very frustrating experience. My mind was something else. I didn't even realize I was saying this. I'm so sorry. I'm going to go talk to that person and apologize and make sure that they didn't take it the wrong way and explain what the situation was. So you never know what the intent is. And this is why feedback is such a good thing, because if it's truly a gift and it's constructive and it's given in the right spirit, you're helping that person to learn to grow from the situation instead of assuming that they're bad and evil and whatever else is going on. And I think this is what Mansour was talking about earlier, that what he meant by constructive feedback is to be careful that when you're giving the feedback, not to cross the line between constructive feedback and destructive criticism. And that is such a good point, because that's why I like this SBI format so well, because you're not being destructive in your feedback. You're not accusing them of bad intent, of malfeasance, of being evil person. You're saying, this is a situation. This is the behavior observed. Who knows why that behavior is there, but this is the behavior observed, and this is the impact on people. And I just wanted you to mirror back the feedback. Did you hear it correctly? Correct it if you need to. And then you can have a discussion about that. And this is a very different situation. And that Mansour was talking about, for example, was when a colleague of mine was really frustrated with another colleague. And he goes, I'm going to tell him what's on my mind. I'm like, yeah, you should do that. And just remember, do it in a way that's going to move your relationship forward. He came back and he says, well, that didn't go the way I expected. And I said, why not? He goes, well, I was really direct. I told him exactly how I felt. And I go, did you follow the SBI model? He goes, no, I just told him that I think he's lazy, that he doesn't care about the team. I'm like, that's not the SBI model. That was your feelings about what was happening, but you didn't describe the behavior. You didn't follow the situation, the behavior, and the impact. You just moved straight to how you were feeling about the situation without the intent, again, of your own intent of having this gift of feedback to improve that behavior, to deepen your relationship. So, to the point that Mansour was talking about, you want this to be feedback that is a gift to somebody rather than unloading and getting things off your chest. How are you improving that person? How are you truly making this a coaching conversation? And the hardest versions of this are when you're managing up, when you're coaching up to your manager who may not be doing as effective as a job as they can be. But when you have this culture of feedback, you realize that feedback can come from any direction, come from up, down, sideways, all around, 360, all around you. And you welcome it because it becomes an opportunity for you to improve. I mean, how can you be a better leader? How can you be a better manager of people? How can you provide that coaching conversation with people when you're no longer focused on just giving them feedback about what happened in the past, but to also think about, and this is what the future could look like. This is the behavior that could be done differently, that could be improved upon if you have a very, very different type of feedback and relationship. So Jay has one comment here that emotional maturity is an enabler of constructive feedback, and that is absolutely true. You have to have some level of control, of awareness about your own emotions to be able to approach these situations from a place of genuine care and of wanting the other person to improve. If you're approaching it from a point of view of anger and frustration, it's not going to be helpful in the situation. And oftentimes, feedback is given in those contexts, like this did not go well. I'm going to give that person feedback and tell them how they should be doing it. So that context is extremely important. That emotional intelligence and maturity is so key. And Mansour has a really good point. Feedback is usually preferred to be in private. Absolutely. This is why finding a good time and place is so important. And I'll give one example of a situation where that might be different. And that is when you are a leader and you're welcoming feedback from somebody, from a team and organization, and you're in a team meeting. It's like, how can we improve this situation? What are things that I could have done differently to help this project move forward? Because there is safety in numbers. And when somebody who can be brave enough can stand up with their peers and supporting them, give that leader feedback. Well, this is a situation, here's the behavior, and this is the impact on me and others. Then the leader needs to, first of all, listen carefully. That person giving the feedback has the support of other people and the support of the leader to do this in front of other people. And other people can benefit from the experience of seeing how that leader responds and accepts that feedback from that employee, that team member. And it can do wonders when somebody can accept that feedback, welcome that feedback as a leader, to set the expectations that all of us can use feedback to improve. So that's the one exception, Mentor, that I would say that feedback needs to be given in private, because these are the things that we have to keep in mind as we create this culture of feedback, how to do it in an effective way. So I want to close out today's live stream with a couple ways to get started. And one of the most beautiful things I've done in my business was when we started on this culture of feedback. One of the partners said, "Hey, let's do this exercise where we're going to have a feedback exercise, but we're going to tell people it's going to be really positive. We're just going to talk about positive feedback." And so we talked about and introduced this whole idea of being better at feedback. And so today we're just going to give positive feedback to each other. So each person had a stack of index cards, and each person also had their name written on a paper bag. And you would take some time to just write a person's name on a card. And then we would write something about them that we were very appreciative about them or grateful for, something that they did or were being about. I'm just providing that feedback to them. And just going around and just writing those things and then putting them into each person's bag. And, it could be, again, using that situation, behavior, and impact, but it could also be just something that this person does every day that just has a really great impact on the people around them, on the work that they do. So some people were commenting, I just love how incredibly diligent you are about the details. You catch all my mistakes, and I so appreciate that. Another person would say, we're in this situation. I never told you how grateful I was that you came up and you like talked to me about something that happened and gave me a pat on the back. And then you distribute all those cards out, and then each person gets those bags, and you sit there and just read them. First of all, it is this most beautiful thing to know that your team appreciates you. And even if there are some tensions between people, there's always something to appreciate about everybody. But it also gets you into that habit of saying, giving feedback can be a really wonderful thing. And so I think this idea of providing feedback as a gift, as a positive gift, is a fantastic place to begin. Then you can work on really applying it to situations where constructive feedback can be done. And you may take small things at first, little things, like saying, hey, can we give feedback to each other after a meeting or after a particular project comes? And here's another way to be thinking about it. Ask for the feedback directly yourself, again, as a leader, to say, hey, how did I do? What things did well, didn't go well? When I was at Forrester, we had something called plus deltas. What was a plus in this situation? What were deltas, things that we needed to change? So it wasn't things that we did wrong, but what do we need to do changing? What do we need to change in the future? Or some people might say, what do we stop, start, and continue as another way to provide feedback? So I think the most important thing here is to think about what kind of feedback your organization needs to have. How can you structure feedback so it becomes something that becomes a regular habit? Because if you think of what leadership is, what culture is, it's the habits that we employ every single day, the things that we do, the ways that we show up, and the ways that we behave. So, how do we create that culture of feedback? How can you create it in your organization? Where are the places where feedback and more two-way conversations, open conversations about how we can improve could really be useful? And let me just tie this back to the work that you all are most likely doing if you're chiming into this broadcast. If you hope to do big, audacious, transformational, disruptive things, then feedback is absolutely essential. Because otherwise, how can you adjust and adapt the many things that you're doing to the current situation? We know that we aren't perfect. I've talked about the difference between being perfect and being excellent. And excellence when you're constantly trying to improve yourself. And you can't improve yourself without feedback from people. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? How do we get better? And the only way we can do that is to make sure that we're constantly providing and receiving feedback from people. And so that's the most important thing here is how can you create that culture for both the giver and the receiver of feedback to be really strong in this? I just have one other um, thing. And Peter just was saying, it's just sharing here. I remember about 10 years ago, it was only me, you, and Brian Solis, were attending remotely, and my feedback has been minimally distributed. I'm not quite sure what that's mean, by what you mean by that. But I think more than anything else, one of the but what you were doing, Peter. So I think one of the key things that I really, again, Brian and I were very much into providing feedback to each other about what's working, what's not. And if you have known either one of us, we're very, very giving, but we also just tend to avoid wanting to like make each other feel bad because Brian's a great guy. He knows he really likes me. I like him. It's like, how do I give him that feedback that he did something that wasn't the greatest thing? And SBI has just helped so much just break through that log jam with us. And again, because you like the people you're working with, so how do I give that feedback? And it just reduce that tension and that need to like say, I don't know how to do this. Well, we had a mechanism to do that. And it was also super helpful to be able to go up to someone like, hey, something seems to be not going on, not to be right. Is there something that needs to be unsaid? Do you want to give me an SBI? Do you want to, is there something that I need to know about? So it was a great way to have a shorthand way to be able to open up conversations so that we could deepen our relationships with each other. So I think in many ways, I am excited about this space. I so deeply believe in it because I see so many of the dysfunctions and the improvements that organizations can do, especially when they're trying to transform their cultures. I think one of the best things you can do is to go and think about how you can really establish this culture of feedback. As Jay so well says, dignity, trust, generosity, they're often lost in these tense situations. And that's exactly what you're doing with the culture of feedback, is you're establishing that ability to have these conversations, to establish that trust. You have that daily practice of giving feedback so that when the big situations come, you know how to do this. You know what the expectations are. You know you can have those tough conversations so that you can move through them as smoothly as you can. So that's what I have to share today. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I just want to share with you that I am not going to be here next week. I'm taking the week that next week off because I'll be traveling back to the US for my little vacation here in Morocco. So let's connect again on Tuesday, March 8th at the regular time, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 o'clock Eastern. And we'll be talking about how do you take your business transformation and make it viral. I'll be pulling from some recent resources and books that I've come across, because I think that business transformations, if you just kind of plod along, they tend to just become weighty and heavy versus organizations that really have these things take off and they literally take on like a viral network kind of approach to things. So I want to take some of the practices that we've seen around platforms and viral networks and apply those to how you can really support and use those elements in a business transformation too as well. And thank you again for all of the other birthday wishes. Thank you, Marissa. Enjoy the rest of your birthday trip. Yes, it definitely is a trip here to just celebrate. Again, thank you so much for joining. I wish you all the best in creating that culture of feedback. And I will see you all in 2 weeks. Take care. Bye-bye.